Welcome to 365 Days in a Word, a daily journey through Scripture. Today we read the book of Genesis chapters 37 to 40. Chapter 37. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father was a foreigner, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the boy was with the son of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought back a bad report about them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph dreamed a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have dreamt. We were binding sheaves in the field. All of a sudden, my sheep rose up and stood upright, and your sheaves stood around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brother said to him, "Will you really reign over us? Or will you really have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "I have dreamed another dream. The sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Will I and your mother and your brothers really come to bow down ourselves to you to the ground?" So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come and I will send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." Israel said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A certain man found him wandering in the field. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" And he said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." The man said, "They have departed from here. I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. When they saw him some distance away, before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "The master of dreams comes. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast has devoured him. Then we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not kill him." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, but throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, so that he might rescue him out of their hands and deliver him to his father again." When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his coat of many colors that he had on, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, carrying it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let us not lay our hand on him, for he is our brother and our own flesh." So his brothers agreed. Then when the Midianite merchants passed by, they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there, and where can I go?" They took Joseph's coat and killed a young goat and dipped the coat in the blood. Then they took the coat of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Do you know whether it is your son's robe or not?" He knew it and said, "It is my son's coat. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has without a doubt been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I will go down into the grave mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and a captain of the guard. Chapter 38. At that time, Judah left his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua, and he took her and had relations with her. He conceived and bore a son, and called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. She again conceived and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. He was at Kezib when she bore him. Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord killed him. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go, have relations with your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up descendants for your brother." But Onan knew that the descendants would not be his, so when he had relations with his brother's wife, he let his semen go on the ground, so that he would not give a descendant to his brother. So what he did displeased the Lord. Therefore he killed him also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow at your father's house until Shelah my son grows up." For he thought, he may die also just as his brothers did. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. As time went on, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. After Judah was consoled, he went up to his sheep shearers in Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. It was told to Tamar, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." She took off her widow's clothing, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat in an open place which is by the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah had grown, and she was not given to him as his wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. He turned to her by the road and said, "Come now, let me have relations with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me so that you may have relations with me?" And he said, "I will send you a young goat from among the flock." And she said, "Will you give me a pledge until you send it?" And he said, "What pledge should I give you?" And she said, "Your signet, your bracelets, and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and had relations with her, and she conceived by him. She arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on her widow's clothing. Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he could not find her. Then he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute that was at Enaim by the road?" They said, "There was no prostitute in this place." So he returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." Also the men of the place said, "There was no cult prostitute in this place." Judah replied, "Let her keep them for herself, or we will be laughed at. I sent this young goat and you did not find her." After about 3 months, it was told Judah, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has turned to prostitution, and what is more, as a result of prostitution, she is pregnant." Then Judah said, "Bring her forth, and let her be burned." When she was brought forth, she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, "By the man to whom these belong, am I with child?" And she said, "Please identify whose these are, the signet and bracelet and staff." Judah recognized them and said, "She has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Shelah my son. He did not have relations with her again. When it was time for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. While she was giving birth, one put out his hand, and the midwife took and tied on his hand a scarlet thread, saying, 'This one came out first.' But as he drew back his hand, his brother came out. Then she said, 'How have you made a breach for yourself?' Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, the one that had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah." Chapter 39. Now Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, so that he became a prosperous man. He was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he had done to prosper. Joseph found favor in his sight and served him, so he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put under his charge. From the time that he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. So the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and he had no concerns regarding anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome and well built. After a time, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "My master does not concern himself with anything concerning me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my charge. There is none greater in this house than I. He has kept nothing back from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" She spoke to Joseph every day, but he did not listen to her about lying with her or being with her. But it happened one day that Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there. She caught him by his clothing, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his clothing in her hand and fled and got outside. When she saw that he had left his clothing in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought a Hebrew among us to humiliate us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. When he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his clothing with me, fled, and got outside." She laid up his clothing next to her until his master came home. She spoke to him using these words, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought to us, came in to me to mock me. When I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his clothing with me and fled outside. When his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, "This is what your servant did to me," he became enraged. Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, so that he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The keeper of the prison committed all the prisoners that were in the prison to the charge of Joseph. So whatever they did there, he was the one responsible for it. The keeper of the prison did not concern himself with anything that was under Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it to prosper. 40. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, with the chief of the cupbearers and with the chief of the bakers. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he attended to them. They continued to be in confinement for some time. Then the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream, and each dream to its own interpretation. Joseph came in to them in the morning and looked at them and realized they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in the care of his lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they told him, "We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." The chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, a vine was in front of me, and in the vine there were 3 branches. As it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand in the same way you did when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you, and show kindness, I pray you, to me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For I was indeed kidnapped out of the land of the Hebrews, and I have done nothing that they should put me in the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I also was in my dream, and I had 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift your head from off you, and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." It happened on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position again, and he put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. However, he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Thank you for spending time in God's words today. Join us again tomorrow as we continue reading the Bible together. If this reading blessed you, consider subscribing for daily scripture from 365 days in the Word. Remain blessed.